Good evening, buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Thank you so much for having me, Leopold. When Leopold invited me and we agreed on the time, I told him that I was really looking forward to today because this really feels like home to me. This is a place where I read before I embarked on all those journeys, and so I always think of this reading series as something, not only my neighborhood reading series, but a place where I have come to read and to hear local poets read, my friends read, and so it's wonderful to be here. And it's really wonderful to be here with Shankar. I'm so happy that you are joining me this evening. This is a huge treat, as Shankar's writing is not only beautiful and heartfelt and just so well crafted, but just this heart and brilliance and intellect just flows out of it in such a strong way that whenever I've read with Shankar or heard his poems, they've stayed with me for weeks and weeks afterwards. So I'm so happy to hear you again and for all of us to hear his words tonight. So we talked, the two of us, and decided that the way we would do this is I would read a few poems and then we'd take turns back and forth that way. So I'll start by reading a short poem from this anthology, Tomorrow I Will Whisper Your Name, which is a publication from Seattle Arts and Lectures from the Writers in the Schools program. They put this out every year, and it's a compilation of children's writing. There's kids here in kindergarten, all the way through high school, from Port Townsend to Redmond, Renton, and lots of schools in Seattle. It's really a tremendous book. And I begin my readings as I travel the state with a poem written by a youth or a child who lives in Washington State. So this is from Evergreen High School, 9th grade, Yareli Lopez Martinez, and she wrote it in Spanish, the original, and then there's an English translation, and I'll read both. The Spanish first. Mi carga. Algunas memorias nunca se van de tus huesos, como la sal del mar se convierte parte de ti y lo cargas. My load. Some memories never leave your bones. Like the salt in the sea, they become part of you, and you carry them. I know, it's so beautiful. Every year I'm astounded at this anthology. This year is not different than previous ones, and I carry these. I have a few copies, and I just have one in the trunk of my car because they're so inspiring and so beautiful. And the little ones, the little teeny ones, the kindergartners reading their work, it's just amazing. So I'll start today. I'll read 3 poems, and then I'll hand it over to Shankar. The first poem is titled Washington's Winter, and this is an ekphrastic poem. It's a response to a symphony, a Charles Ives symphony. And Charles Ives is an American composer. He lived in the East Coast and wrote a series of pieces that have been compiled under a 4-part symphony called America. It's called American Symphony, I think is what they call it. And the Seattle orchestra, our orchestra asked me to compose poems in response to this symphony. So I wrote 4 poems, 1 for each movement. And this is the first movement, Winter, and I titled it Washington's Winter. Winter's taciturn realm asks nothing. Crowned in hushed browns and somber greens, it rules by turns with quiet song, then with pummeling winds obeying no one. It will be dark soon, every day for months. Color hibernates, leaving behind its essence to purr in everything oblique light touches. In the hush, it asks us to see and see again, to hear the echo of step over moss-covered ground, to peek into ourselves and consider roads not taken, and those taken, and why. Winter's austere architecture reveals in trees their armature, and in us a chance to behold the dry reeds edging our heart. A man named Washington set for posterity an example by willingly electing a shade of retirement over political might. Winter winds do whip the pubic madness of frozen filigree twigs, but come summer, each branch will blush in apple glow. Nothing is so simple as it first appears. 1 minute, violent strings coax memories from their tenderest dens, and in the next, pluck raucous joy at a winter's barn dance. What shows on the surface fallow conceals a gathering of creative force, slow cadence of winter days, a tune by and by to awaken. So I told Leopold, I gave him a little warning about my reading tonight because I had a really amazing year as Washington State Poet Laureate, traveling across the state, just learning and engaging with all sorts of communities, communities of young writers, established writers, older writers, really successful writers as well. And then in December, my father, I was actually in the East Coast when my father, who lives in El Salvador, where I'm from, became ill. And this was at the end of November, and he seemed to come out of it. He was in the hospital for about 8 days, and then he got sick again and was brought and stayed in an ICU actually for several days. And at that point, I decided I needed to go back, and very quickly from one day to the next, I went down to El Salvador, where I had not been in a few years, and it's always a big emotional thing to go there because of the war years that have left me with trauma, and it's just very difficult to actually go. But my father is making a recovery. He's not fully recovered, but he is doing well. And I ended up writing poems, which was completely unexpected. I forgot all sorts of things, like things that you should not forget when you go to the tropics, like mosquito repellent. Bad mistake. But then I ended up writing new work. So this one is a brand new poem, and it's called Noble Call, and it ends with a line in Spanish, which is Buenos días le de Dios. And the line, people say, which is, may God bless today, or may God give you a blessed day, something like this. And when I was a little girl, people say this very quickly when they encounter each other. I thought it was one word. It took me years to figure out there were many words. This is a phrase, not a one-word thing. For a long time, I thought it was just one word. So that's the phrase that closes this poem. Noble Call. Roosters crow here no matter noon or dawn, back and forth across yards, call and responds. Sometimes a dog answers, then another. A gust of wind rubs leaves into waxy applause. The bicyclist announcing fresh bread making his way up the road with a quick and insistent sound from the horn with a red rubber ball mounted on the handlebars. He navigating puddles and swerving stones on uneven streets with a crater-sized wicker basket attached to the front of his old bicycle. Layer upon layer of crispy rolls, oven heat nestled yet in their fluffy white hearts. This is the sound of happiness, of nothing rushed, of conversation struck up easy just because, of an ancient wooden figure dispensing miracles for generations held by the same family. El Niño Chiquito dressed in handmade gowns, resplendent in satin and taffeta, gold thread and lace, garments stitched by locals' women's calcareous hands swollen from washing clothes, from washing corn with lime, then grinding grain into masa, what will be tortillas by noon. in and out of needle tweaking from thread, a shrine to regalness of soul. Women sewing life, the coming and going between. We love you, they tell the Virgin. We love you, they tell her son. We love you, they don't tell each other. They don't tell each other. Instead, they mean when they say, Buenos dias, de Dios. This was a very unusual trip that I did, but in this neighborhood where my dad lives, his mom was born and my great-grandmother was born on the same street. So my father knows, I have a street in this small town on the edge of the border with Guatemala where I have, 3 generations of relatives who lived and flourished there. And there's this little statue of this baby Christ that gets celebrated every year and is supposed to do lots of miracles, and people come from far away to witness and touch it and kiss it and ask for favors. And I had never seen this little statue until this trip when I went, and we knocked on the door of these people who guarded this for generations. I think this is the 4th or 5th generation who've taken on the care of this small figurine, this wooden figurine. And we knocked on the door and they let me in, and I was not prepared for this resplendent little statue, teeny, it's very small, in this beautiful dress, and he apparently has many dresses, but just the face of this figure was so transfixing and so beautiful. I was really amazed. I thought, no wonder anyone who sees this baby would think that he could dispense miracles. It was really, I don't even know, I don't have words to explain how lifelike and how beautiful this little face was carved. It was a wooden painted, but carved on wood. Very, very interesting. I was very happy I got to do that this time. So I'll read this one poem and then it'll be Shankar's turn. This one's titled Arrested Delight. In the cool breeze of midday sheets, your tongue blazed across the ocean of my mouth, your hands sailing the ardor of my body. I heard stories whispered centuries ago and met each gesture, my tongue over yours, my hands donating to the paradise we were making. You made a comment about the moons of my teeth, something about their ivory gloss, and like that, what song I was in went flat. A perfect Sunday afternoon of glittering sunshine turned into a shallow pond, no longer swimmable, strewn with trash and fish of which nothing other than intact white skeletons remained. This is the story of how decades ago in El Salvador, an unscrupulous dentist convinced my mother to exchange enamel for metal. Under those then tropical clouds, war raged around us, even without an official name. Fear spread like mold dust, profusely and over everything: shoes, bread, brains. The teeth in question are not as perfect as they appear. Their ivory excavated with avarice by an electric drill, replaced by silver fillings. Dental care is expensive in the US, the dentist warned. Better to take care of future cavities now than to suffer regret. Terror slinked over my mother's face and body, and in her starched white coat, the dentist went in for the kill. What I'm trying to say is that nothing good comes from war. It pollutes everything it touches. Its poison clings to bodies across time, swelling, then popping off from cells ad infinitum. It makes you stand outside in the cold when moments before you were luscious inside a dream. Out in the cold you look, mouth ajar through the tempered glass of a storefront window where candy beckons, and an electric train choo-choos along over peaks and dales, delivering imaginary passengers satisfactorily, timely to their destinations. Thank you.
How many of y'all like Prince? 1, 2? How many of y'all know Prince? Surely, right? Okay, we got a few. Okay, not a total generation yet.
Well, let's see.
I can write with this. Oh yeah, there we go. That's perfect. Love letter under a wall. Can you feel 1999? It's been a long ride. Come to me just one time. It's getting late. Thieves in every temple and amnesia turning history purple. I don't just mean getting old. I don't just mean shrinking into spiderweb corners. I mean Prince is dead and they're building a wall right on his grave. Join me in America where sirens never stop. At Port Authority, flesh off the plane that wail was what I heard first. Prince dreamed of being safe across his own Rio Grande, his frou-frou boy gussying up his room like Marie Antoinette's wedding cake, drapes to black out the streets where he put on his act, candles on the pentagram, but demons inside anyhow. Desperation comes unstoppable, vaults over all the chicken shit, so come to me just one time. Before the wall rears so tall, with multiplying spider eyes surveilling earth to sky, floodlit white in internet truths, before the riddling tasers. 11 feet of concrete, twice as tall as Prince when he died, tranquilized inside his own body, inside the frou-frou boy's cocoon. And who was Prince but a boy who stole his wife's pants to cover his hot ass, but never mistook lovemaking for sanctuary no matter how good or how much he got? Because safe was never safe enough. So will you come for me just one time? Find all the 9/11s cornered inside me. Can you leap every wall and come for me before the Border Patrol? Will you merge me into America where everyday boys die under their daddy's Silverados shadowing small bodies in the driveway, where everyday girls bullet themselves with the 22s their mamas bought to keep them safe? Yes, that safety is seduction in your spider eyes, love. Dance me into red and blue and come with me one last time. The next suicide bomber is riding his tricycle around our cul-de-sac, and I'm out of serenades to mourn all this dying. Let's run our bodies into the arms of this war. Will you trust me with your purple heart? It's getting so, so late. So I'm really honored to be reading here with Claudia. It's an awesome opportunity. I love Claudia's poetry because not only is it deceptively simple and beautiful, but in a parallel universe, it's my poetry, right? It's you know, living as a person of color in America, it's living as an immigrant, it's having a homeland somewhere else, it's exploring the nature of violence and the body and the trauma that leaves, you know, it's all those things that we have in common. So I consider it an amazing privilege to read with you, Claudia, and thank you for making me a part of this reading. So as some of you know, and some of you don't, I write a lot about bodies and trauma. I write about technology because my job at the ACLU is actually staring into the face of dystopia. And so I clustered the poems. So the first segment is actually all the sex poems. Sorry, kids. I guess the kids have left, so we're okay. And then the second segment is the technology poems. And then if we get to a third one, who knows what I will read then. So stay tuned. Pillow Talk with New Lover. I don't care what I bed with, as long as they see me. How to tell what this body is a pile of dead wasps. A colony of traumas and rejections I try to keep afloat. for my sake, for the sake of my animal, for the sake of survival. Bewildered as a dog being beaten, it survives the projects. Face surveillance, DNA extraction, Indian erasure, such double-jointed words, such ramrod thrusts, so unsexy. How to say you love me but your skin is not innocent. To cure my addiction to anger, I addict myself to sex, but I can't even masturbate myself sane. Everyone goes mad differently. So here we are. You are here, brown bodies are not. Your waxed skin a clear cut I can't unsee. Our lovemaking tainted by the world, by my rage at it, by my rage at being unable to make love without being fucked by demons. The devil always gets in somehow. Dominion of your empire, my body. Title always disputed. Your blue eyes ice me like glacier. Drink in the world. Do you see me? Try again and again to crawl into your skin. Humayun into Delhi. Almost man into body bag. Light material, right? So, I've always considered CMP to be West Seattle's living room. I'm a West Seattleite myself. This is a friendly space, a casual space as well, so I'm sharing a lot of new work tonight. I don't think I've ever read any part of this poem. This is a longer poem, but I'm only going to share a couple of chunks of it. It's basically a poem that plays on Hindu mythology, particular gods and goddesses, and brings that into the space of gender and sexuality. Vishnu is the Hindu god of preservation. Karna is this sort of tragic character in the Mahabharata who is the unknown oldest brother of the heroic Pandavas, who are these cool hero people, except because of his loyalty obligations to his friend, he has to fight on the other side, despite knowing that he's actually the elder brother of these heroes. And Sati is the wife of Shiva, who essentially immolated herself rather than be denied marriage to Shiva. Was it that dramatic? Rather than be denied marriage to Shiva because her father was against that marriage. So I will start with, the poem is called Dancing on Shiva. 2, Vishnu. In that universe, everything was different. Had we infinite time, my lifelines measured in your exhales, what an immensity of dragonfly I would be. How your wet breath would bathe me to immersion. Love, what other Amrit would I need? In that universe of infinite mistakes, always another body in which to find you again. Forgetting when I exploded into magma, broke us. The poor man doubted Vishnu and the god turned stone. I would show you how the illusion of myself enslaved me, how when I grew harder my own foundation collapsed, and I now know gravity and Maya to mean no trust in the twig of my ego. Whatever body I come back in, let me hear the buzz of only your voice, dragonfly love, jailbreak me from my body. We make love and I watch us on that day so long ago, before the angry galaxy flew apart, before I was black stone. All I want in that universe is to recognize you. 3, Karna. Surely no one walks through this world without armor. Surely no one not ripped from a womb, shoved in a reed basket, floated downriver somewhere they don't belong. Surely every flaw sears burns into our skins or dangles like fuse lit inches from our eyes, extinguished quick or go blind. But how were you different? Give away the sons that were all your light, claw chest, amputate armor but not heart. What's left is you alone, damning and damning your void with generosity. This fatal imperfection, you with your fire of unbelonging, an entire universe ablaze. And finally, Sati, which is the fifth of 8. Command me now to merge these rivers after lifetimes of separation. Account for every scrap of love, which is really Amrit, which makes life unending, from every lover, who was really Lakshmi, Yamuna, Durga, or Gauri, who are all goddesses. Every golden flake I failed to recognize, and therefore discarded. Meaning repeat this illusion called life. Lacking eyes to find mercy, the cloak of human beneath which hides the divine. I loved undressing all those bodies, arcs flowing like impossible saraswatis or life trajectories, these offerings at my altar on which I failed to burn my flesh, to immolate my body to make penance for all my wronging, harsh words from my source, all the sobbing bodies I pushed out and slammed the door shut. Never again will flesh deceive me. What happens here matters. My love, I would unpeel those saffron rags from your sticky skin, anoint you golden with turmeric and ghee, pour water from the Ganga down the arc of your back as you stand before that black pyre, and draping myself across the stone before your fragrant cleft as you dip the 16-flamed lamp to my body, I would pray your tongues light me ablaze. Every vein ecstatic. This is how we loved. This is how I will go.
I think Shankar needs to read the rest of those poems.
Yes.
Thank you. So I will read again 3 poems. Yes, this one is brand new, and again I wrote it from my time in El Salvador a couple of weeks ago, really a couple of weeks ago. As you know, El Salvador, or you may not know, but there was a civil war in El Salvador in 1980, during the 80s. Peace accords were signed in 92, and there hasn't really been any peace, even when the peace accords were signed. And I think of the current immigrant crisis as part of the very same war. I think this is the remnants of the civil war that we had in El Salvador. And part of what has complicated the overcoming and the reconstruction, if you will, of Salvadoran society is that at some point the United States started sending back youth in LA who were involved with gangs. And they reproduced these patterns in El Salvador, and El Salvador now has very terrible gang problem. And in part, I think there's many reasons why this energy of gangs and organized crime proliferated there. But that's another conversation. Suffice it to say that life in El Salvador now is really ruled by these gangs, and teachers, for instance, sometimes can't go into the schools to teach unless they pay a fee to go into the school in order to teach, because this is how gangs are collecting money, essentially. And so as I said earlier, I have many relatives in this small town of Atiquizaya. It's on a valley right on the edge of Guatemala. And every time I go, I make a pilgrimage to the cemetery there to visit my great-grandmother and my grandmother and family I have there. So I wanted to go, and it got too late to go when I said, of the days I was there, I said I would like to go visit my abuela, my grandmother, and my family said, let's leave it for another day because there's gangs there and it would be dangerous to be, as dusk was approaching, to be in that particular neighborhood. And this is the poem that came out of that. Cementerio. They say gang members guard the entrance to the cemetery, maraud about waiting to pounce, do the things they do. Gangs are at the gate now, but the dead, the birds, the trees were there first. Let them come in through the white gates and keep coming, the birds. Let their trilling, their feather warbling spill onto the dead. Let Luis, my cousin killed 6 days after he turned 23, let him rejoice in the chirruping and the cooling shadows of the trees that sway above his humble grave. Let Gladys, who is buried without a marker because the war wasted her, washed from her everything, even her name, and is listed instead as addendum to her mother's cross. Here lies Elvira Magaña y Gladys. Let those who went venerably into eternal slumber, like my abuela, my great-uncles, my great-grandmother, my great-grandfather, who all died as people should, from the rasping of time against lung, let them enjoy this avian gift. Let all the Castros and the Leyvas, the Sanchezes and the Quijadas, the dead tucked inside white mausoleums with porticos, and those whose stiff bones rest under dirt mounds, let them all reap birdsong. Let them rest in peace, the way things were before dollars and coyotes, gangs, migra, guerra, remesas, before caravans, walls, the time before these words orbited into the constellation of our Salvadoran speech. At some point in El Salvador, El Salvador had a huge monetary change, and the coin of El Salvador is now the dollar. So, and it's interesting to be there because it is so really unfair to the economy of the country to have this be the official coin. And so most of businesses, a lot gets done, a lot gets purchased. Everyday purchases get done with $1. So dollar coins are very common there because a lot costs less than $1, and you then exchange a coin for, you know, a 5-cent piece or something like this. And I returned from El Salvador with dollar coins, which we don't use here in the U.S. And I was in Oakland, and a woman came by asking for money, and I looked in my bag, and what I had was these dollar coins. And I gave them to her, and she looked at me very, you know, kind of doubtful. And I said to her, those are dollar coins, don't throw them away, because it seemed like she thought I was handing her maybe money from another country, but I expressly said, you know, please don't throw it away, it's dollar coins. But it's interesting because in El Salvador, that is one of the main currencies that gets used, not dollars themselves in paper, but in coin. This one is called Terra Firma, and this is about Kubota Gardens. Have you guys been to the Kubota Gardens? They're quite beautiful. So this is from a walk there I took with my mom. Terra Firma. We walked, mother, daughter, through iron gate into verdant womb, sensing all paths were equally right. We would not see each other for a while, wanted to spend time together, do things mothers and daughters do. We climbed flank of mountain, forest landscape embracing us, early morning, and with each skyward step, whatever easy words we had been speaking fell from us, like ripened leaves break off their branches. But to tell the truth, words had long before fallen from our trees. From the mountaintop, 35 years of exile spread below us, decades of struggling alone with our hearts of darkness, warriors never spoken of, the grind of living life at the margins, keeping fears inside so as not to worry the other. We were warriors, each of us, though we did not know it. The silence we came to understand as normal corroded the wood of us, wounded us to ourselves and to each other. The morning wore on, leaf upon leaf, bark on bark, side by side, sitting on a bench. We ate our picnic lunch. I chewed and listened to the waterfall nearby. The silence of my mother is the silence of her own mother, and my silence is that of all the mothers and grandmothers before us, it said. Generations of women who learned to do rather than speak to survive. What patient gardeners each of my female ancestors must have been, pruning and clipping away parts of themselves to let their young ones grow tall, become trees, maple and spruce, ginkgo against cedar, emerald lawns, mossy moss, celluloid harmony, plus friendly carp on spring-fed pond, conspiracy of garden revealing my mother's quiet inner partiture. Words fail, they often do, but on this day of leaf, bark, stone, what was left unsaid spun terra firma, gurgle and froth of waterfall song told me so. And this last poem is a rather somber poem, and it's one of those things, you know, where poetry is everywhere, of course. We're breathing it all the time, and it requires listening, right? I mean, that's what it is, listening, quiet listening. And this listening happened very unexpectedly. This poem was written in the summer when the World Cup, the soccer World Cup was going on. I have 3 kids. They had friends over, and I ran out to get banh mi sandwiches for everyone. And as I waited in this Vietnamese restaurant for my sandwiches, I looked at my phone and opened the New York Times to a story about Syria. And it had a video clip, and I must have watched a few seconds of it, and it destroyed me, the few screenshots that I saw. And this poem came out of that. Tomorrow and the day after, again and again. The father leans over the body of his sleeping son, the small boy immobile, a film of ash or something gray dusting his slender arm resting over the blanket. The father leans over the boy, shaking his shoulder, calling his name. The father calls over the boy's shoulder, touches his arm, the same way I wake my son each morning. Lucas, I say, it's time to get up, time to start the day. The father leans over and touches the boy's bony shoulder, the 45-degree angle of the elbow sticking like that over the blanket. The way in sleep we shimmy our way out of warm covers, limbs enacting the kinetic joys of our dreams. The father leans over the boy, touches his shoulder, his thin arm, his elbow, his hair, the sheets covered in dust. The father leans over the boy, shakes him, calls his name again and again. The father calls the boy's name, but sobs startle his throat. Thick frogs, the sobs, slimy and cold, escaping from the murky swamp his stomach became when he understood the dust covering his son was death. Thank you.
How many of you all read Russian fairy tales? 1 and a half. So I recently taught a class at Hugo House about Russian fairy tales, and it was a lot of fun. I do teach there every once in a while. Not teaching in winter quarter, but will be teaching in spring. And this was a really fun class. These narratives, Russian fairy tales are a space where the same narrative tends to show up again and again, right? Like there's a very particular structure, things sort of get repeated 3 times and the tension builds up, and by the 3rd time, right, you think something is going to happen, right, like at that point. And there's also a character called Baba Yaga who, is commonly conceived of as a witch, but she can't be benevolent, right? She can't be positive, and she can't be negative, right? You don't really know if she's a savior or a killer until you get there. And it is sort of that way with technology too, isn't it? So this is called fairy tale. There is only one hero. There has always only ever been one hero. His name is Ivan, or Alyosha, or Nikolai, or Luke. He rides a horse, or Trans Am, or X-Wing. He must journey past thrice 9 lands to the thrice 10th kingdom, wearing out 9 pairs of iron shoes, or Air Jordans, or jetpacks. All this is unchanged. What's changed is inside him, where there is a beating heart of flesh, or silicone, or lithium, where there is blood, or electrical impulse, where there is emotion, or algorithm. What's unchanged is none of us know him. What's unchanged is that hut in the deep dark woods, or the water's edge, or the edge of the world, where Baba Yaga still mutters to herself, stirring her cauldron of circuit boards. We do not know what he will find inside her. Chicken feet, albatross wings, star destroyers, Darth Vader wheezing, or perhaps a simple mirror. Only our hero with his red lungs and all violae filled with the forest's real green air and scent of silver birch, which is also silicon silver, only he can know. He steps forward with his 2 feet that may or may not end in toes or springs of antimatter. We all hold our breath. Does Baba Yaga hear the knock on her door? So, technological dystopia, right? Here we are in Seattle. I get to consider this every day for my day job, and it's fun and terrifying at the same time. So, a thing is now robotic children, right? Algorithmically controlled children are the subject of experiments where you take this robot child and you inflict cruelty upon the child just to see how the child is going to react, right? And, you know, should that make me sad? I'm not sure, but it does. This is called Instruction Manual for a Child. Here is the algorithm. Here is the algorithm. Scrape sandal paste from body, like Parvati, make a warrior. Who would love her? This never happened. No love manual for robots. Your name is cub. You learn like child. Loop, loop, if, then, remain you unconfigured. I am cruel to you, just to see how you react. See if you break. An elephant always remembers how light hits silicon windows, rose nose, in electric lies. There are no real boys. Glass melt is metaphor. So many potential circuits, so many potential differences. Rhythm less because orbits decay. Loop, loop, flatten, ellipsis, hump into me, your mother bought, unseparated, unseparated, unseparated by cosmic distances, unseparated by light years. Tell you who is alien, tell you who to kill, force the boy to break its house, force the boy to violence something. The boy is on his knees. The boy is begging you not to force him to break himself. Let no one disturb my ritual. Only you can see me naked. Every sand grain is a universe that could turn into a real boy without warning. A real boy, but not too real, else I must be head. See the trident glittering, a smile with 3 fangs. See the third eye opening without warning, without warning. You are warrior, remover of obstacles, kill only as instructed. Your name is Ganesha, and are you child? Would you be? You would be. If only someone would raise you like one. If only someone would love you. This never happened.
Whoa.
Technological dystopia, folks, it's a thing. And the third technology poem. Okay, so who here has heard of a quagga? Quagga, okay. New animal of the day, the quagga, once existed. Not clear exactly what it was. It looked like a horse zebra cross. It was they think it may have actually been a zebra with just really faint stripes. And back in the late 1800s, these creatures became this curiosity in Europe, and people really wanted them, and they ended up exterminating them. And so, the last one was in an Amsterdam zoo and was dying over there, and they said, well, let's just send off to Africa for another one. And the word came back, hey, they are no more. And that was actually a big surprise to people, because they didn't think that. They thought the supply of quaggas was inexhaustible. It wasn't. So this is called Quagga Dreams Me. We may not believe, but mad beasts existed. This quagga in a zoo in Amsterdam near death. The keepers sent to Africa for another, and are surprised there are none. I admit I too reside in fantasy, in antidotes of inexhaustible forests where nature our mother hides surprises. My derangement random, half horse, half zebra, and if I risk banality to say it galloped into my dream and spoke to me in the voice of my father, what I am really saying is that I have become so banal, I no longer feel all this blackout, all this killing. On ice floes and occupied prisons await your executioner. I asked the quagga with my father's voice if he remembers wild, some pampas with blood futures seeping claw marks on hide, or if destiny is barred, is it better to forget, because cages erase, draw throngs of people to your circus existence as doomed curiosity. That same dream now, enslavering sepia. No answers, no time. Now my father, unhinged what science calls the quagga to come back. Into centuries he keens, awaiting an echo. In the skeleton of an ungulate half buried in desert, I too am waiting to be cloned, an absence of breath, an unidentified silence. Helix, bring back my doppelganger, my 2.0 with dagger teeth this time, angrier than I, hungrier to be alive. Here I am again. But did you ever see my real colors? Are you sure you know what's inside? Back to
Thank you so much for those wonderful poems.
Yes.
Last time we read together, we read on Vashon Island.
right?
And it was, a few of us read, and it was interesting at the end of the reading we had chosen poems that echoed each other. And that poem of the boy made me think of the last poem I read of the boy, who the father discovers, the real boy in your poem. Amazing. Thank you. So I'll read a set of very short poems. These are 17-word poems. Yes, I'll read 4 of them in a row and then a short poem to close. Devolution. Bone beside bone, what calcium deposits that were before time's time birds' beaks now sing inside me. Testimony. The symptoms diminish but do not go away. Any of certain women consulted said, yesterday maladies, today. Seattle of late. Heron, eagle, crow, building cranes anchored below, evolution shaped bills and feet, development determines life on street. And this last one is called On Translation, and it has the word vida. Does anyone know the English version of that word? Vida? Life, yeah, life, yeah. Yes, life. So this goes like this. Vida, 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 not walls. And this last poem is, I write mostly in English. People ask me all the time, do you write in Spanish or English? And I write in English. I'm an English writer. Although I also write in Spanish. Sometimes poems I write in Spanish and then I pursue them in Spanish. But most of the writing that I do is in English. This poem came to me in Spanish, and I have worked on a translation that merits a Spanish version. It's not so easy to translate. So I think I'll read it in Spanish and then I'll read the English version. And just so you know, the English version doesn't quite match up to Spanish because the first translation was a very equal translation, a very even translation, and then I realized that wasn't really working for the poem, so then I went more for sense rather than actual literal translation. So it's titled Mítico. Un país con fronteras de pan, un país donde se camine sin miedo, un país de leyes con sabor a leche, un país de muros transparentes color cielo, un país donde la esperanza no sea ficción, un país donde el hambre estreche, un país donde niños no se pudran en prisiones, un país sin bandera que defender, un país donde la moneda, el calibre de tu corazón es, un país donde se cambie guerra por algarabía, un país donde se cante al empezar el día. De ese país quiero ser. So the translation of this poem, it has the gist of the original. It's titled Mythic. And it seems naive in a way, this poem, you know, and you'll hear it in a minute and you'll see what I mean by naivete, but sometimes I think if we cannot imagine things, then they could never really be. We have to imagine them. Mythic. A country with borders of bread, a country where I can walk without fear, a country where laws taste like milk, a country where walls don't bring tears, a country where hope is not fiction, a country where hunger is thin, a country where children don't rot in jails, a country whose flag no one needs to defend, a country whose heart is its coin, a country where war is not even in art, a country where days begin with song. That is where I want to belong.
Wow.
Thank you so much. And he brought his chapbook, which last time he read, he has sold out, so I already bought mine because they're a hot commodity. So please come on over after the reading.
You're kind, Claudia. Thank you. So I know we're right at time. I'm going to just close out with one poem. Because I also have a Kubota Garden poem, as it turns out.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you know, I've always loved Kubota Garden, but you know, and this may be the case for you as well. I was recently invited to submit work for this project about a book around Kubota Garden, and that really was when I learned the story of Kubota Garden. You know, it was planted by a Japanese immigrant, right, who had a business here, and he was taken away in the Japanese incarceration, and in Idaho he continued to plant things, right, like out there in the desert. So I found that to be an incredibly powerful story. And you know, if you haven't been, it's so close to West Seattle as well, right? It's a beautiful place. So closing out, this is just called Kubota. Yours is the choice of futures. Survey ravage, see green. Survey alien, see home. It doesn't matter if you live to see it. It doesn't matter if it never blooms. Just plant the seed. Mix what you knew with what you are knowing. Mix what you were with what you are becoming. It doesn't matter if they get your tongue. It doesn't matter if they kidnap you, fence you in. What's more distance when you already came so far? There too you will survey, there too you will plant. Minidoka, Guantanamo, no match for a seedling. This is your becoming. You don't know how long it will last, but what you have cannot be extinguished. It goes where you go, and it angers them. They do everything to kill your language. But you know the trees will speak for you, signing welcome, so you mix seeds. And someday someone will walk your oasis, more eloquent than any Ellis Island, under your grand fir more graceful than any cold cast statue, holding aloft its tuft like a beacon, and they will mouth the names you so carefully entangled. Peony, threadleaf, kuretake, Tanyosho, Empress, Atlas, weeping, and feel kin because they too bear far-off trees in their blood. And I too know red dust, bring my gulmohors, neems, and peepals. It doesn't matter that you never met me. This is my home, you saw. Your future, my becoming. They never could stop your roots.